You're listening to Being Built. I'm the host, Aaron Davis. I'm here with Jason Molnar, one of the founders of Infinity Labs. I'm the founder of Recless Tech. We're an executive search and tech staffing firm. Really good to have you, Jason.
Yeah, Aaron, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
This is our second go at this.
Yeah, that's right. Last time I was dressed like the Irish Prime Minister. Today I'm dressed like the Big Lebowski.
That's right. That's right. That was Startup Week. That was a fun event. I got a lot out of that, actually.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, and that I think that conversation we had there went really well.
Yeah, judging by the follow-ups after that, I think I had 9.
Good.
6 right after the meeting and 3 emails or LinkedIn messages. It resonated.
Awesome.
That's good.
Yeah.
So it did what it was supposed to do. It got the conversation started.
I picked up a couple of extra podcast guests, actually.
Good.
So I think people saw that I wasn't too intimidating in an interview, right? Like I could tolerate that. So I was happy about the results from that.
Yeah, good.
I sat in on a couple of good breakout session seminars too.
Yes.
It was fun. Well, in that chat, we talked a lot about kind of like the founder experience, the entrepreneurial journey. And I think that kind of would-be founder community was really attuned to that. One thing we didn't get into much was about Infinity Labs and like what you guys do. We didn't go very deep into like capabilities and what you're building and what's cool about the company, right?
Right.
So I'm curious about that, so I hope we can get into that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about Infinity Labs. What's like the high level?
Yeah, Infinity Labs, we focus on engineering solutions for a lot of defense customers.
Okay.
As a part of that, we also build and commercialize technology. We aim for dual-use technology that has applications both in defense and commercial spaces.
Okay.
That's the best way, really, for us to get customers in the space where we're the most comfortable operating in, and then branching into the commercial side as well. That's the ideal for either building your own products or doing your own research and development. What we do in a nutshell, right now our key solutions are modeling and simulation. That's where a lot of people do know us. Cybersecurity, that's focused on industrial control systems, vulnerability assessments of either infrastructure or weapon systems, and the corresponding mitigations that go with that. A lot of companies they can say, hey, we do vulnerability assessments. But do you do mitigations? No. That we do a different bit. We go beyond what normal folks go beyond, and we also, with our simulation background, can do this in a synthetic environment to test things other companies cannot.
Yeah, I'm curious about the modeling and simulation stuff because that's it's foreign to me. I get conceptually what that is, but I don't have a real good understanding of that. What exactly are you modeling and simulating?
Yeah, so government customers have a need for high fidelity physics environment modeling and simulation, right? And the reason they want this modeling and simulation is more cost effective. If I'm doing it in a synthetic environment and doing 10, 15,000, 10 million runs in this specific simulation environment, that can be really a value add for a customer, because if they're going to produce that in hardware or a physical weapon system, they want to have simulated it millions of times, multiple scenarios, different variables, in order to have some sort of confidence on how that's going to turn out, whether it's performance of an aircraft, performance of an aircraft engine, directed energy, you name it. All of those things have a modeling component that we know very well.
You're not just throwing bodies and steel at the what ifs.
No.
Right? We're long past those era.
No,
that era, right?
We're not. And we also, our approach is different, right? We don't throw 6 or 7 engineers at a problem and go, we're going to solve this, with stratified work across these people. We try to focus in on the experts within the systems, the really solid software developers who can make progress in these simulation environments, but also to be a value add on bringing strong software development practices and procedures to government customers who may not have had those.
Government kind of buys in a different way, don't they? I worked in the commercial side of software development, and it's a very different kind of audience that you're speaking to.
It is. It's much different than selling to a commercial customer. Needs are different, wants are different. Return on investment needs to be different as well.
I've always kind of wondered, for the software developer or for the person that's a couple of layers removed from that end user, how different that is for them building that system, as opposed to something on the commercial side where you're selling a bicycle or whatever. Right?
Sure.
You're literally like the first line of defense for the nation, right? I mean, you're literally the first like iteration of like going to war, is kind of simulating these the utilization of weapon systems and other military materials. But have you ever worked on the commercial side, or did you go right from military? And
No, I have a nonlinear path as
Okay.
most Army officers do. I didn't, I'm not a retired 3-star general, right? So my path was I left active duty. And then the first thing I did is I worked for a freight brokerage company.
Okay.
Yeah, and then after that, I had some interest in my intelligence background, and that drew me away from the freight brokerage into the intelligence in the contracting world.
Yeah.
And I quickly became, I was a new guy there to start, and then I quickly became a leader of teams, and then large teams, and then sections of 15 to 20 people.
Yeah, it's cool when you can kind of see both sides of the fence, right? You can work a little bit. And my kind of dual experience was in big companies and micro companies. So I've either worked for multi-billion-dollar companies or super micro, like the one I run now, tiny companies, right? And that's a stark difference between those two as well.
Yeah. I remember working for a large company when I was just starting out in government contracting, and they had 3 receptionists in 6 months.
Oh, wow.
And I thought to myself, holy moly, what am I getting involved in? If they can't even keep a receptionist employed, what's the turnover going to be like for me? And sure enough, a couple of years later, I was moving on and up.
It's not always a bad thing to move on and up. Right?
No.
I was reflecting the other day on, who was it? It was a friend of mine. We were both talking about kind of a disappointing experience we both had with a company that didn't pan out. And what a gift that was to both of us. Because it was good. It was golden handcuffs, right? It was good enough that if things had worked out the way we wanted them to when we came on, we would have never left. And neither one of us would be running businesses that we love at this point, right? So sometimes a little turnover is great.
Yeah, I could have been on a very different path. I had a job offer at the Pentagon for the step below what's called senior executive service.
Okay.
So I had a very high level job offer in the Pentagon that would have changed the course of my life.
Yeah.
And I opted not to make that decision, and boy, am I glad I did not.
It's wild sometimes when you reflect on the tiny decisions you make. When I bought this house, right? And here I am like hosting a podcast that I've done here, dozens of times now. But it's funny sometimes when you reflect on these little things, you're like, oh, should I counteroffer this or that? And then it ends up being this huge variable in your life, right? Career decisions are certainly one of those that have, when I think about myself as an employer, or in my case, like a brokerage of employer relationships, right? I think about that a lot because of the weight of it. I think sometimes even when you're in that decision mode, even then, when you're right in the eye of it, you sometimes don't realize how significant that is in terms of a turning point in your life. You don't know that. You don't realize what a big deal that decision is. It feels huge, but it never feels actually as huge as it really is until like 10 years later. And you're like, wow, things would have been so much different.
Yeah, I call those tripwires, those little things in life that you catch with your foot or your hand, and they end up adding up into significant milestones in your life.
So modeling and simulation is a big deal for you. That makes sense. I appreciate you kind of talking that out with me, because that helped me understand it a little bit better. Can you talk a little bit about some of the stuff you guys are building now, or is it all hush hush, or like how open are your current projects?
Many of our customers, they're in the airspace, right? They're looking at different applications for airborne systems, space directed energy, power, propulsion, and thermal. And then we've recently had a run of significant success with bio-inspired design, biomimicry specifically. And we're incorporating that into modeling and simulation as really kind of a foundational part of our portfolio. And the government has really they've really looked at that capability, and that's different. We don't come at it from just a modeling and simulation standpoint. We hire PhDs in bioscience, PhDs in biology, folks who have familiarity with metamaterials. So we don't just throw stuff at the wall and hope it sticks. We hire the right people to do the job, and then we come up with an approach that's different than anyone else.
What's it like hiring a staff of PhDs, scientists?
Well, I always like to start with, I'm the dumbest one in the room. Who wants some coffee? Because they're brilliant people. No matter the discipline, they've gone through something incredibly trying and difficult, and they've come out on the other end. But we've got some really, really humble brokers of academic talent in research and development. They don't, there's no forcing of doctor this or doctor that. They're good people. They're John, they're Carrie, they're Nick, they're David. That's how we refer to them. They're wonderful people. But it all goes back to hiring and understanding the culture and finding that right fit. Yeah. They are experts within their fields, but they're people first.
I don't know if it'd be fair to record a conversation with you without acknowledging your experience as a veteran, as a combat veteran. But when you talk about, stepping into a room feeling like the dumbest person and offering to fetch, being the chai runner, right? That's how I feel sometimes when I'm talking with another vet that's been to combat. So thank you for your service.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
That's no small deal, right? And I think a lot of times folks are like, hey, big deal, you're a vet. And all I did was dig holes in Kentucky for a couple of years and then come back home. But you guys were out there dodging bullets and doing the real work, and I appreciate you for that. And what you're doing now with Infinity Labs is part of that same, long-term kind of mission, I guess, in ensuring that the security of the country.
It's still in many ways service, right? Yeah, it's a different side. It's the commercial side. There's profitability. Being on the founder side is very different. But now I'm not pulling triggers. Now I'm helping decision makers run variables and situations that will help other trigger pullers, other bomb droppers, other smart folks in command positions make decisions to help America fight and win our nation's wars.
What's your typical day look like? How do you spend your days? I'm curious what you do for the organization.
Yeah, so my calendar is a mess, like most folks in these positions, and frankly, most of our leadership team, it's a mess. Just simply because there's such a need for what we do, the demand signal is very strong. On a typical day, I think I could have anywhere from 1 to 2 hours of working on a project that I can make progress on something. The rest of that day is servicing emails, setting up business development conversations, meetings for business development trips. I'm going out to Colorado next week, and I'm setting out all those trips for that now, making sure I'm using my time wisely there. Because we're purposely thin on the administrative staff. There'll be a time where we can't, but as long as I can, I will. There are some days where I have to rack and stack priorities, right? Yeah. I look at my Scrum board and I say there's 50 there's 50 sticky notes over there. How do I move one over from here to here? And there are some weeks where I only move one, I only move two. There's some weeks where I've looked and I've moved none at all and feel like a failure. But I have made progress. The hard part about it is learning to balance what is a must do, what is a should do, and then what is a wait till later.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, like on a Friday afternoon, I have to do this before I go have dinner with my wife. I'm going to kick this over to Saturday so that I can go have dinner with my wife. And then, that'll wait till Monday. Right? Yeah. Like, I don't even want to think about that until next week. Right. And I'm constantly going, as a founder, I know what you mean. You're constantly going through that prioritization of plates are going to fall. Like this one's way more important than that one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Customers matter way more. And for me, I've got a couple different stakeholders, and you got critical stakeholders, and those matter the most, right? How do I respond to my marketing guy about the logo change? Pass. Right?
Frankly, if there's an employee that reaches out about something, I will drop whatever I'm doing to work with that employee because I need to give him or her that information to do their job.
Yeah.
And some days that takes a while, and that's okay. That's part of the gig. But when you're looking at real time accomplishing objectives, no matter what hat I'm wearing that day, it's time I'd like to make a little more purposefully planned, a little more substantive. We'll get there. We are spinning all the plates. I've got a lot of plates in the air for sure.
I used to work for a founder. She started a big healthcare company and multi-billion-dollar organization, very successful founder. And she was kind of famous for saying, here's a project, it's due in 3 months. This is the deadline, before anybody even talked about what it would take to do it. And then I heard that when I was enlisted in the Army, and I heard that either in boot camp or somewhere when I was a kind of junior enlisted person in the Army, calling it front loading, where you just kind of put all the weight in the arms in front of you while you're running, and it just kind of gets you stepping faster. And sometimes that works. Sometimes it creates a mess. But I have a little bit of experience with that. Just go faster so you don't fall on your face.
That's right.
And quality isn't as important as speed. And it's not my preferred way to work these days, but I've worked that way before. Do you find that with your customers, there's do you have to deal with a lot of like project deadline pressure, and what's your experience been like working with government customers when it comes to deadlines?
If I were to categorize or describe my role in that process, I'm really more on the IR, more on the customer or investor relations side. So I am helping to bring in those leads, pulling those strings, organizing capture efforts for opportunities that either near term, midterm, or far term. When it comes to the actual execution of deadlines on those projects, those are pushed down to the project managers. That's pushed down really through the general divisions that we have.
Yeah.
From my side, the deadlines I will keep track of are solicitation deadlines. If this is due in 2 months, what are we doing now to prepare for it? If this is due in 2 months, have we missed the ball on it? Do we need to try again? And so really what I'm trying to do is to back up that timeline to the left to give us more and more and more time for these opportunities.
Yeah, get below zero so you can gather insight, and you should be researching before you even have deadlines.
Yeah,
right?
it's researching, but it's also having pertinent conversations with either the customer or their customers to figure out what the need is. It's amazing how many people in my business just go on a website, specifically sam.gov, apply for a solicitation and say, all right, I put in my best effort. No, you've put in the bare minimum effort. True. You've written a proposal. You've done nothing to really understand the customer's needs. And so the reason we've been successful is because we can back that timeline up to the left, and we can really figure out what the customer needs. And sometimes even anticipate the problem beyond the problem, which is a reason we've grown so quickly.
Who's your typical customer? Who's liking what you're selling?
Our first customer was United States Air Force Research Lab, AFRL. Their need for modeling and simulation support is great. They do a lot of cutting edge research and development. They do a lot of the tip of the spear for research and understanding how these software changes, the modeling will impact larger scenarios, systems, et cetera. We had a good relationship with AFRL, and so for us it was very easy to slide into a conversation with them because we knew their needs already. What we've done since then is we've been able to grow that customer base well beyond that. To DARPA, that continues to be an organization, a premier organization that fundamentally pays for the hard problems. They want to solve the world's hardest problems, and that's what we do. It's an organization we respect greatly.
Nice.
Other than that, Space Force is a customer. We just recently were awarded a contract with NASA. So we're working with NASA now. Army, RTC is a customer.
What's Army RTC?
Redstone Test Center.
Okay.
If you're doing any research and development, anything worth the while in the Army, you're going through a couple of organizations. You're going through RTC, TRMC, or what's called PEO STRI.
Okay.
All of these large Army organizations have the charter for doing Army capture, acquisition, but really long-term future technology. And so we've been able to to grow that portfolio substantially, starting with one we had intimacy with, and now we're moving that across many defense customers.
Sounds like there's a little bit of a theme for kind of airborne or air and space related to resources or technologies.
That's where the greatest need is, right? It's a hard problem. And anyone who says it's not is underappreciating the significance of the challenges in low Earth orbit and geo, all the different things you have to think about in space and air, the different platform limitations, and then frankly what an adversary's limitations are, taking that all into account. It's not easy. It is a hard problem, and it should always be a hard problem. And then when you add domains like cyber and space to that already complicated problem, it takes it from a one domain war, land, air, sea, to all domains, and not all domains at a single time, but all domains at once.
How much do we know about our adversaries' limitations and what their capabilities are?
I think we do a decent job. I haven't been in those spaces for a few years where I was doing that research. But there are still things that surprise. Strategic surprise is a real thing, whether it's China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, et cetera. Those are real things. Now, we rely a lot on the information from our partners. But at the same time, that information is only as available as the assets and the resources that collect it. And so if you're looking for what a large state-run intelligence apparatus should look like, China's hard to beat.
Should we be scared?
We should be more vigilant. We should be more prepared. The conversation in defense circles over the past few years, we used to use the term near-peer adversary, right? They're not as good as us. They're almost as good as us.
But they're in our weight class, and they can knock us out if they hit us.
That's right. So that was a few years ago. Now we're using the term peer adversary, which tells me very bluntly that we are not up to where we need to be outpacing our adversaries. Part of that is acquisitions in general, how our defense apparatus does acquisitions. I read an article 3 weeks ago that said that China's acquisition process, depending on the need, can be 5 to 10 times faster than our own.
Yeah, I read something similar, that it takes us 16 years to build net new capability. Yeah. And it can take our adversaries a quarter of that.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit intimidating, not because of today, but because of tomorrow. What does our competitive position in defense look like 10 years from now?
Yeah.
If it takes us 4 times as long to build net new technological capability with regard to national defense. I hope it's a dot in time, that changes, and that compels us to be a lot smarter and a lot more aggressive about our acquisition and execution of work process. Yeah. The acquisition process, you were talking about capture. I mean, we have whole iterations of the process of buying and selling services to the federal government that is completely foreign to the commercial space, right? We don't run capture. There is no such stage, right? Nope. Put together an RFP, it takes weeks, not years. You know what I mean?
That's right.
We're doing acquisitions in the federal government space that take years just to present proposals and decide on vendors. That's crazy.
There have been strides in government acquisition over the past 3 to 5 years. Some of these organizations that have the charter to do it faster, do it quicker, that get pots of money to really invest in emerging technology, that's a start. But it can't be the finish line, because you need organizations to all embrace that mindset. The Federal Acquisition Regulation, you want to talk about a complex document or some bedtime reading material. Why don't you look at the FAR? That'll knock you out. You'll sleep good. But the problem is those regulations, they can limit companies. Thankfully, the defense space is moving forward with that, but it can't be seedling efforts. It's got to be a systemic process.
Yeah, I was talking to he's not one of the founders, but he's one of the first employees of a startup. It's building some pretty cutting edge AI capabilities, and to be used in like highly regulated spaces, that kind of thing. We were talking a little bit about the balance that they're trying to manage between getting their stuff out there in order to win new deals and win customers and get buy-in from their market, get funding and continue to progress and develop this capability, protecting their, kind of exclusive knowledge and progress.
Proprietary knowledge?
Yeah, their proprietary knowledge. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to protect this proprietary knowledge, and they're also trying to get it out there into the market so they can get some early adopters and some beta customers and that kind of thing and advance their capability. And that's and my encouragement to him was, make sure that it gets built. Make sure that it happens. Like, if you lose your competitive advantage, but you win getting that thing to market and somebody else gets paid for it, you're a winner, right? You're going to die a winner. You might be a poorer winner. Right? You may not be as rich a winner. Personally, I mean, this is just and I don't know how this applies to military capabilities and so on, but that's the analogy I'm trying to draw. Personally, I would rather know that I innovated something and that it exists on the market and somebody was smarter with it or commercialized it better or executed the dream and the vision better because I started something and didn't get as far as they did. I would rather the idea get quote unquote stolen, which is not real. I'd rather the idea get stolen and somebody make sure that it happens and happens well than to have this what if that dies or takes 10 years longer to make than it should have. So, I wonder what application there is of that concept, prioritizing that it gets done over kind of like the competing nature and trying to win this deal and win that bid A lot of that acquisition stuff, it feels like it loses to the challenges and the competition and the commercial interest of the vendors at play that are saying, I want to build that. Oh, no, I want to build that. And a lot of that acquisition process is built around creating these competitive environments as opposed to ensuring that quickly and intelligently and securely these capabilities get built.
Our military industrial complex is extremely competitive. Mm-hmm. And it really has been since before World War II. Maybe it was done for the greater good then. Maybe it's still being done for the greater good now. It's just we have set ourselves up as a nation where these processes are designed to be competitive from the onset, and they're competitive before people know they're competitive. Mm-hmm. That's where the real players compete. Mm-hmm. Is there's over here 2 years I've had of when there's a need, and we can do that. Yeah, we already got that work. We can provide solutions that support that need. It's hard to keep up with the big dogs. Mm-hmm. What feels like sometimes, infinite resources and personnel. Mm-hmm. Lobby is 200 people strong in the right locales. And that's frankly, it's not where Infinity's ever going to be. Right. We're here to provide solutions and engineering services work and create products for the government that have commercial capability. But let's just say that doesn't work out. We've done something for the country at that point. We still win.
If the big guys, the inside conversations that were happening 2 years earlier, as you were talking, I'm thinking, well, just write the contract and get it done right then, right? But if you were to do that and you didn't intentionally facilitate this super competitive environment, you'd be cutting out all of the cutting edge stuff, all of the nimble capabilities of the small organizations. You don't know what the alternative approaches to solving that problem are. So there is something kind of nimble about our behemoth bureaucracy in that it ensures or attempts to ensure some level of competition. Yeah. And you tend to get the best result when you incentivize and highly incentivize competition.
Yeah. So one of the programs that does that really well is the SIBR and SITR program. Small Business Innovation and Research, Small Business Technology Transfer. These programs pair you up with government customers who have a need for emerging technologies, capabilities that either barely exist, don't exist, or that they'd really like you to figure out if they can exist. That program, right now it's run through the Small Business Administration. That's a way to do it, although it sometimes can be incrementally funded. I think there's probably a better way to do it, but it is a damn good program. And there's a lot of good technology that comes out of that. And it's built in within this program to give you chances to compete beyond an initial, let's just say, small effort to do a proof of concept, right? The phase one. The phase two is where you build that concept, and the phase three is where you move to transition it in the defense and potentially commercial markets. And so that program has been a real success story for Infinity Labs. We've converted many of those past phase one into phase two and beyond. That program is working as designed. It just gets harder because the government doesn't have a ton of bandwidth. When you have 16, 17, 18 things you're doing as a government civilian, and one of them happens to be this program, is that the fire you need to address today? Probably not. And frankly, these government civilians who do so much work and work so hard and are damn fine stewards of America, they're overworked. And we haven't done a good job as a nation at building that civilian core up the way it should be.
Sounds like a smart way to ensure that the smalls are able to quickly get in and prove their capabilities.
It is, and as it was designed.
And produce something useful.
Correct.
Right? Not just prove like a proposal might do, but actually produce, right?
Oh, yeah.
Prove through production.
Significant technologies have been developed through there. Autonomous technologies that now guide or fly autonomous aircraft. Biotechnology solutions that change warfighter uniforms, warfighter kit. Like, these things are amazing and incredible achievements. And I know as a country, I don't think we talk enough about them, but it does exist, and it is a point of success for our company.
Yeah, good. We need to figure out a way to scale that as a nation.
Absolutely.
That's a smart thing. It reminds me of an experience I had. I used to run a talent acquisition team for a multi-billion-dollar enterprise, and part of my responsibility was our contingent staff or staff aug program. So we had all these vendors that participated in this consulting contracting space. And what's typical in that industry is to set up a set up a competitive environment where you could onboard or offboard vendors who had performed once a year. And so you go through this big RFP, competition, reflection kind of thing. And I was of the conviction that that was way too slow. That, a given vendor could have 3 different reps working for us in that year-long period. And so the ability to offload a vendor that sucked, or to onboard a vendor that, picked up great talent, or even just built their company 6 months ago, right? In the middle of that acquisition cycle was just necessary. Mm-hmm. So I was very intentional about making sure that there was not a window that opened occasionally once a year, like benefits change or something, but literally any given day, if one of our internal customers wanted to introduce a new vendor, that we would have 2 or 3 vendors that were kind of approved, long-term, proven delivery resources for us, and that they always had a kind of a blank space in their lineup for a new vendor to participate and compete. So there was always an open door. We were constantly assessing and measuring actual performance, not proposals, but actual performance in a competitive environment of new vendors. It was the minority of it, right? So we weren't constantly distracted with poor performing promises, but we were constantly entertaining those promises in order to see if they really added up. And it just gave us ability to onboard new vendors every day. Any given day, somebody shows up and kicks ass, you're on, you're in, right?
Right.
And so we didn't have an acquisition cycle window that opened once a year. We just made those decisions each day, whether or not somebody sucked, you're out of here, somebody's great, you're on. And that was one of my more strategic wins. I look back on that and it's all about intentionally creating competition that respects changes that happen in the pace that they happen, right? The vendor typically was as good as the 1 or 2 or 3 people on that team that interfaced with us, right? Those could change any given day. I don't care about your brand, your logo. I have a good friend who always says companies don't really exist. They're fake. It's really just people, a bunch of people. And every time those people change, that company changes, right? So being able to change as quickly as that does was always important to me. And I think there's an analogy to be drawn there when it comes to the government making these enormous acquisitions. If they can, like with the SIBRs and what's it called, the SIDRs? What?
Yes, SIBR and SIDR.
SIDR, those programs that are kind of dedicated to the smalls. It's a great window to kind of get you in. Keep looking at the new guys. Keep looking at the small guys. Like, what have you done for me lately? Oh, you guys are building something cool. Oh, you guys came from Raytheon and Boeing and whatever. Cool. You put together this team and this capability. Let's see what that can do, right? Yeah, I love that idea.
Those have been some of our most successful, where we partner with a large company who's got extreme capability, and they don't need to be the one in charge. We are the ones in charge. It's our idea, but we're using some of their technology. Those have proven to be wins for both companies, right? And then the STTR program mandates the use of a research institution. And that doesn't have to be a university. That can be a federally funded research and development center. That can be a nonprofit that's authorized as a research institution. So it gives you a strong ability to make a really compelling case for whatever the challenge is, whatever the technical problem is. This program specifically lets you kind of go after it in a varied amount of ways, which is a great way to ensure competition and novel solutions.
I think you told me when we talked last couple of weeks ago something about you guys building out new physical space.
Yeah.
Is it a lab or an office space, or what is it you guys are building out or working on?
Final stages of finalizing that agreement.
Okay.
But it includes some lab space, includes some secure space. It includes really taking over a whole floor in our building, which is called the Coons Building, adjacent to the Dayton Arcade.
Okay.
And so it's the next evolution. We're hiring a large tranche of people. The demand signal for our work continues to grow and increase. And frankly, people need a place to be. And so really that's the evolution for us, is to grow that space, grow those capabilities, give them the tools they need, and then continue to hit those hard problems for government customers.
Your reference to research made me think about, the laboratory. It made me envision white coats, right? Beakers and things blowing up in the lab.
We have done some stuff with lab coats, right? We did some research that involved pig skin and pig fetus for testing human performance of a particular product, right? So there is really a labs in Infinity Labs, and that includes also a cyber lab. It includes a modeling and simulation space to test novel concepts and compare those different things, whether it's cyber, inject different scenarios into it. So the labs part of Infinity Labs is very much alive and well.
You mentioned the next tranche of growth in your team. We've talked about that earlier over breakfast way back when.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about what that looks like. How do you anticipate growing in terms of the skills and the location and the people and the kinds of roles?
We did anticipate that growth. We really focused on getting the infrastructure in place before the growth started to happen. And our COO, Joe Kirby, is one of those silent professionals that just grinds, gets it done, and then you look left and right, and the organization has grown by 10 people. It's grown by 20. It's because he has set up the infrastructure for that. You know, we make injections and inputs, but that falls into his lap. And it's nice to have a real COO, not just someone that says they know operations. Joe is operations. So kudos to my business partner and buddy there. But what we did is we prepared for that growth. And so what that looks like for us is, you know, benefits, right? Understanding those benefits, how to grow in different locations, all the different tax implications of what that looks like, which is complex, as you know, as a founder yourself. And then figuring out the locations are going to be, whether it's going to be a remote, whether it's going to be hybrid, whether they're going to want to be in the office, on customer site. All of that is an iterative process. We're lucky enough that we have an organization that allows kind of all the above. So I think that's one thing that sets us apart. But ultimately, we go where the work is. And right now, the demand signal is growing that capability and those skill sets in Dayton, Ohio, hence the need for the expansion.
You want to hear something funny? This is an interesting story with regard to hybrid, remote, on-site work. So for the first time in a long time, several years, I just presented 2 top candidates to an employer. And both of these candidates for this position are currently working long distance and want to work for a local company. One of them's commuting an hour and the other one's working a remote job. But what's interesting is that the first time in a long time, I had somebody who said, I'm working remote for a company out of state, and I really want to work for a local employer with a local office. She's going out of her way to find a local employer with a local office because she wants to go work in an office locally, right? And I always knew those folks were out there. And I just, of course, I'm not the only, that's not the first time it's happened. It's just the first time I've run into it in a while. I work with a lot of tech people and tech adjacent stuff, and a lot of that population likes to work remote and enjoy the solace of working at home and being able to focus and that kind of thing. But it's a little bit of a rebound that I'm observing there. That what I was hearing is this like kind of mailing it in, dialing it in. I don't feel connected to anybody. I feel like an outsider. I think that's interesting, that there is kind of like this interpersonal need that's not being met. Like I don't necessarily need to be best friends with everybody I work with, but I want to know them as people, right? I want to be acquainted with in more than an avatar. Right.
Well, we are tribal, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to build a culture virtually. It is, and we understand that, right? We're lucky enough that we have people that respond really well virtually. We've been a best place to work all 3 years, and that includes remote employees. So I know how difficult it is. The reason it's so difficult is Robin Sharma says it the best. The business of life is the human connection. In one way, shape, or form, I think you get the best out of culture when you interact interpersonally, face-to-face, human-to-human. Not everyone wants that, and that's fine with me. That doesn't bother me. But I would say a majority would like the human interaction. And I think that's another thing that expanding our space offers. A little more room for that networking, a little more room for that growth. Frankly, a little more room to grow as a person too.
That's always been 100% true. I think even for the folks who 100% want to work from home, I think the work from home thing isn't about, I don't like seeing the facial expressions of the person I'm talking to. I think it's more about, I like the convenience, right? And so I think that some people just value the convenience way more, and some people value the personal interaction way more. That's an interesting balance. And I've always, my preference has always been, I like the opportunity and the access to meet locally with my team, a very micro team, handful team, is all but one of us is here locally, and we can grab lunch anytime. right? We can meet up on the deck for a drink and whatever, anytime, right? But day to day, we're working virtually, right? But we see each other as humans and we know each other as humans because we're all in the same town, right? So that's an ideal situation. I think that's ultimately what everybody likes. It's just the control over where they do what they do.
Sure.
Right? And you don't get any more control than actually being commutable to where your coworkers live. Right?
Yeah.
And to actually be able to do physical stuff with them locally. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it doesn't need to be, holding an egg on a spoon and it's some kind of obstacle course race nonsense, right?
No.
Doesn't need to be some fake ass culture building shit, right?
No.
It can just be like, meeting each other's kids or something at some point, or, just sitting down or being able to share a whiteboard at the office or whatever. Right?
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be some fabricated thing.
Yeah, agreed.
Setting up the infrastructure for the team that you're building is important, obviously. Do you have some perspective about who the next dozen folks are that you'll hire? Is that something you can say out loud? We're
growing on our current contracts. We're expanding those. So the need for the modeling and simulation professional or someone with the acumen to do that is constant. The demand signal is very high. The strong need for us right now is cybersecurity. So we've moved forward with a large effort for a government customer that's going to be, kind of the preeminent cyber effort for cyber vulnerability assessments, infrastructure, et cetera. And that means you've got to have a lot of bright cyber minds who understand this, particular technical intricacies of the equipment, the software. And so we are right now going through a significant uptick in hiring, right?
Nice.
We want to have the right people to do those jobs. We don't want to phone it in and just someone who may have a CISSP certificate and go, oh, this person knows cyber, when he or she may not. They may have a knowledge, they may have a baseline, but maybe not the exact skill we need. So we put a significant amount of time informing the job requirements, vetting the job requirements, and then the interview process for us. There is no box check. We really go into it purposefully, and we can find diamonds in the rough. I think we found one today.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know you made a hire that we were chatting about that was a tough hire, and so congrats on that.
It went from a few candidates to like a few really good ones after a few weeks. It's funny, and I mean that's your world.
Yeah.
How it could be. I'll just say a little bit dry, and all of a sudden somebody turns on the faucet and out come the candidates.
When it rains, it pours.
That's right.
And ultimately, you only need one. Sometimes the problem with that is finding one, and sometimes the problem with that is finding which one.
Yeah.
Of this batch, right?
Yeah, and we're always happy that they choose us. We realize people with those skill sets, they can choose
anybody. Yeah,
they can. But it says something about our culture that they're choosing us.
It's interesting you say that. I was going to ask you why somebody would choose you. Like, why would I want to work at Infinity Labs?
Well, we're different, and we're different on purpose. I believe, at least locally in Dayton, and with our reach now beyond, whether it's Huntsville, Alabama, Colorado Springs, Fort Walton Beach, Florida, to name a few, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, we are really trying to change the paradigm when it comes to defense work. There's a guy, Andrew, you may know, named Paul Merlucky, billionaire type, who's transforming the face of defense work.
Okay.
He's doing that with a lot of his own capital and then raising some as well. Really smart guy. Frankly, a bit of a maverick in the space. Got a lot of respect for him. We've done it on a bootstrap level. It's not the cash injection that someone with a venture background already has a significant B in their bankroll, right? But what we're doing is we're doing it organically, slowly but surely. And that's resonating with candidates, people who are in the defense field or the defense space, and frankly, those who are not, that find the work that we're doing interesting.
I've always found that an interesting dynamic to compare. There's a certain level of competency and intelligence and proof that you expect to see from a venture-backed firm because they've had to prove their plan and their promise to a number of people who are very careful with their money, right? There's also something particularly impressive about somebody who has the balls to bet their own dollar, right? Or their own family's livelihood. And what I like about Infinity Labs and your peers, the co-founder group there, is that there were 7 of you originally,
correct,
right? And now 6 of you, one of them has passed. But 7 very capable, intelligent professionals bet on one another. So part of what's kind of beautiful about your origin story is that you've got kind of what I love about the venture-backed or the funded startup experience, in that you've got a number of kind of high-profile, high-impact, very capable people who have said, I believe this is real. I'm going to bet on this in your co-founder cohort, right? And then you've also got a ton of self-assurance and balls to actually just put it up and do it. So I love your origin story because you don't often see 7 co-founders going at it together, right? That's a rare level of confidence in one another. So kudos to you. That's badass. The other thing I'll say about that is I do have a little bit of a soft spot for the customer funded startup, right? So not only did you believe in one another and each believe in yourselves, but you quickly, within months, not years, found customers who believed in you. And they spent real money on you, not extra out of their wealth, but real money that they needed a return on you. And so that's a tremendous amount of confidence. You don't get to look at your funding round or put, notices out, press releases out about, the stage C fund or whatever. But you get to say, we won that. We were awarded that $1 billion contract, right? So there's a lot to be proud of there.
There is a ton to be proud of.
You want to wipe that tear from your eye first, or what?
There is a lot to be proud of, right? And when you're sitting on that, as the metaphor I've used with you before, when you're on the edge of the Rubicon and you know what's about to happen if you cross that river and you can't return, there are moments where you're like, is this the right decision? Is this going to work out? And then there's the moment where you take that first step in the water and you're like, I'm doing this. We're going to go for it. And then there's the moment where you've crossed the river for the first time and you look back and you go, all right, this is real. There's no going back. There's only success. Attack this with maximum violence, because anything else is admitting failure. And that's the entrepreneurial journey. I shared with you at the event the other day, you cannot half-ass entrepreneurship.
No.
Or else you're going to get your whole ass kicked.
I know that pain where you're like, shit, I hope the water's not deeper in front of me than it is behind me, because I know I can't get all the way back.
Yeah.
Right? Like I've committed too much.
There are moments where you
swim or die.
Yeah, where it is a swim or die moment, right?
Yeah.
But when you get beyond that, when you start to see revenue coming in, when people say, all right, I believe you can do this.
You're on the plane.
You're on.
You know you're going to get there.
You're over
the water.
We're over the water. We're there. So having that early was great, and I'll give some kudos to my other co-founders who've got engineering and computer science backgrounds that the government needed and wanted. Their bright minds got us over the hump.
Nice.
But what we've been able to do since then is not only convince those government customers, hey, we can add value even if these guys aren't doing it. We're going to add value with people who are under our purview, who understand what we're doing in the mission, and in many ways they're going to be better and brighter than us anyway. And you get your government customer to give you a try like that. Our conversion rate is very high with those opportunities, because once they see we're being honest and forthright, and that we can provide the capability, and then add some subject matter expertise if we need to, that really sets you apart from a vendor that's going to, throw a solution at you that may not be ideal.
One thing I've observed going from, multi-billion-dollar enterprises to small companies, back to billion-dollar enterprise, back to small companies. One thing I've observed personally in myself is that I figured out how to climb the ladder and win leadership in the enterprise level. And there you really figure out how to strategize, plan, delegate, and execute work through careful management of bigger teams. But what's easy to forget is how to roll up your sleeves and do dirty work and actually just build and make things happen. Execute firsthand on things that are productive for your customer's sake or whoever you're working for. It's easy to forget that because you get so wrapped up in this kind of strategic orchestration, right? And what I love about going back to small, it's like, it's not just take out the trash, send the invoice, the administrative stuff or whatever you have to do, but like you actually have to get engaged in delivering the work, right? And I'm not a coder, so like for me, it's not like writing software code or whatever, but there are things I had to do running like a small software shop that are very delivery oriented that I just was not involved in as an executive in an enterprise level, right? But really having, okay, you need that by when? and then I got to do it, right? There's nobody else capable of doing it. I have to do it, right? And I think that has been a tremendous value to my confidence, that I'm not out there playing some game of politics. My son and I were just talking about, he works in a large organization. He's having to figure out politics, right? I'm like, that's a horrible thing to have to get great at. And you kind of have to know whose feelings you're going to hurt and whatever, what the trigger words are here and there. And it's just such a waste of time and attention to get, because you do have to get great at it in the enterprise. Yeah. You have to build that skill. And it's such an unproductive skill. All you're doing is making sure you don't hurt people's feelings and jam up the cogs in the big machine, right? But actually producing work that's delivered to your customer that creates value for people who pay you money, you're so far removed from it when you're getting great at politics, right? And so I love the idea of being firsthand with my buyer who loves what I do for them, and I've done so much of it as something I've actually done, right? And there's a pride that comes with that. It's like working out, right? Like you can't fake that. Nobody can give that to you. You can't buy it. I guess you can get implants or something. But like, if you're strong, if you can move this amount of weight from here to there, if you can run this heat from here to there in this amount of time, there's no way to fake that. Yeah. You either can or you can't, right? And so there's something beautiful about going small again that proves to you and gives you a whole different level of pride about, I didn't just fake my way into this compensation because I played politics and because I postured well with this boss or made so-and-so believe this or that. I actually delivered this value that's measurable, observable, and affirmed by people who gave up money and loved it. Yeah. Right? And loved what they got for it.
There is value in the meritocracy. That is one thing I very much believe in is let's just make it merit-based. Right. What have you done? What have you accomplished? How are you moving the ball forward? What are you delivering to the customer? Because then it becomes really, it becomes less qualitative and it becomes quantitative. And I think it takes the emotion out of that conversation. Now, I work with a lot of very bright engineers. They don't need the emotion, right? They're already smart math people, and so I'm speaking their language. I'm communicating with them in their vernacular. But when I'm talking to other business professionals, there's politics involved, right? There's, if you want to get good in this space, you do have to wear that hat from time to time.
Yeah. You got to care about which toes step where and whether or not you step on them or beside them, right?
Yeah. High EQ field for sure.
Absolutely. I had an employee who's a high SME, high-end producer or whatever, kind of operating at a director level. And he used to like to tell me that, it's not personal. All these people in here, they're all emotional about this and that or whatever. This is just business, He liked to pretend like he was all X's and O's. And he would tell me this while he was upset about somebody doing this or doing that and making him look a certain way. And I had to remind him often that it is personal and it is about emotions. And that's all of it is, really. I mean, we the power balance of the entire world is about that, right? It's about how people feel about certain things, right?
If people ask me, is it personal? Or do people take things personally? My retort is very simple. It's the same one every time. Is there another person involved? Right. Then it's personal, right? Whether you want it to be or not.
Are you training in AI or are you dealing with a human being?
Exactly right. Right. Exactly right. You have to understand how to work with all types of human beings, right? It is extremely personal whenever there is another person involved.
Yeah, if you're selling shoes, it's personal. People are buying it because they want to feel like an elite athlete or because they want to be the best they can be or whatever else. Like there's all these brand impacts on the rubber and cloth that you wrap around your feet. That's all it is. Yep. Is emotional, right? Yep. So something I kind of like to conclude with as we kind of get close to the end of our hour here is about what you guys are working on next, right? Kind of where your future is. And so I'm curious about like 3 things. What your big goal is over the next couple of years, what challenge is going to get in your way, and then how you're going to break through that. What's your kind of big goal or your BHAG, if you will, over the next year to 2, as you guys as founders kind of look at what you can accomplish and where you'd like to be in the near to long-term future. I guess it's funny. 2 years feels like long-term anymore. Like planning for 10 years feels dumb, right? Yeah. 2 years feels like the long-term now, right?
Yeah.
We're a strategist.
We're 3 years old now, and you look back and you're like, no, we're not 3 years old.
What you wanted 3 years ago feels dumb, right?
It's insane. what's the big rock? What's the thing we're working on? What's next? The growth that we're experiencing on the cyber side is a large catalyst for other growth.
Okay.
Because what we're going to do with that is we're going to build significant or capitalize on the capability we already have, and we're going to grow that into something not just good but great, world class even.
Nice.
Because I know our organization, I know how Dr. Edge and the other team, Nick Marquardt, who are Mike Ausser, who are experts in cyber. I know what they're going to do. They're going to knock it out of the park because that's what they do. And then when people see value in that and that we're delivering, because this is a merit-based contract, there is a delivery required, that demand signal is going to go higher and faster already than it is. That's a growth area for us, not only in capability, but in personnel. And frankly, that's going to translate over to the modeling and simulation side, because there is a huge need to model cyber, model the different effects of cyber, and doing it in a synthetic environment where you're not touching real systems or breaking real things. We're one of the, I venture to say, we are one of the few companies that can actually say we know how to model cyber. We've done it for a government customer, and we know cyber, and we know modeling and simulation all at once. There are companies that have, 3 or 4 letters on the New York Stock Exchange that can say that, but not a lot of small companies, our size that have the capability. So really meshing those two skill sets together, and then of course always, as an underlying capability is bringing in research and development. That's involved in everything we do. That's not just a focus area. It's a focus all the time is research and development. Because if you're not trying to grow the service or the tools that you're using to build or to provide a service for the government, you're just kind of punching the clock. We're not going to punch the clock. So for us, it's really marrying those capabilities and then going after some larger acquisitions, because in our industry, you have to build many times what's called past performance.
Yeah.
And if you do not build past performance, if you don't have the right, the vernacular goes, tickets to apply for these contracts, you have to be a subcontractor. We're adding up the tickets to go after the big stuff.
Nice.
And so for us, that will be a whole nother scale, but it's one we're readying for.
So when you think about kind of building out and executing on cyber-related opportunities and then scaling up your past performance in order to position yourself better to win the bigger tickets, right? To kind of step you up to that next level. What's gonna get in your way? Like, what challenges are you anticipating that are intimidating enough to be kind of bolstering up your capabilities and your team and your strategy for?
Yeah, some of the requirements to bid on these contracts can be obstacles. But again, because we have a superstar COO, we are building up the infrastructure right now to go after these large bids. We're putting in the compliance elements required, not today, but a year from now, 2 years from now, whenever that date comes, we're going to be ready to bid on it. We're going to have all that in place, and we're not going to miss out on that opportunity. So we have anticipated, we have planned for, and frankly, we have applied resources to that obstacle.
So you're looking around that corner already.
We're trying to look around the corner. Honestly, if you're an entrepreneur and you're not looking around those corners constantly, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. It's not just execution. It's looking beyond. And for a small business, we have been focused on execution for quite a while. Now we're starting to look around corners much more. Now we're starting to anticipate these potential obstacles and really apply the necessary pressure to address them.
Yeah. Jason, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Aaron.
Thank you, man.